What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Commentating Christian YouTube channel, where today we're going to continue the series Teams That Were Torn Apart. Now, I know it's been some time since my last video in this series, but let's pick it up once again and talk about one team that surely hasn't been forgotten. Now, for those of you that are tuning in for the first time on this series, basically I look back at history to see which teams were so good that the rest of the world had no other option but to strip them of their best players. Now, we've covered that AS Monaco side that won the Liga, we covered that Leicester City side that won the Premier League. Today we're going to visit a team that has won multiple championships before and since the departure of many of these top players, but has this club truly ever been the same? Probably not. Now, this team was filled with absolutely promising young talent. This team was also dubbed the Giant Slayers in that season's 2018-2019 Champions League's campaign. And once again, this team has never been the same. Both can be said for the club and the players that have left that team. Now, of course, as you can probably guess by the background, I'm talking about that Ajax team from the 2018-2019 season. In the 2018-2019 campaign, Ajax beat an impressive Feyenoord and PSV side to the Eredivisie title. They also won the KNVB Cup, beating Willem emphatically in the final 4-0. But arguably the most impressive part about that campaign for Ajax was their run into the semifinals of the Champions League. Let's not forget that they had to qualify from the playoffs before the competition even officially kicked off. They finished second in a group containing Bayern Munich, Benfica, and AEK Athens. Now, in this group, they also managed to hold Bayern Munich to a draw twice, 1-1 away at Munich, and then another 3-3 draw at home. They would then progress out of the group and beat the current European champions Real Madrid in the round of 16. The away fixture in that leg is particularly memorable as Ajax went away to the Bernabeu and got a 4-1 win. They would then go on to beat Juventus in the quarterfinals, once again by getting a victory away from home at Turin, beating Juventus 2-1 on that leg, and then overall 3-1 on aggregate. And had it not been for a Lucas Moura hat-trick in the semifinals, Ajax could have very well contested a Champions League final. 18-year-old Matthijs de Ligt captained this Ajax side through this historic double, and he, along with some other great young talent, the likes of Frenkie de Jong and Donny van de Beek, were skyrocketed to the limelight. Now, I touched on some players there, but let's just quickly go through the most used starting 11 for that Ajax team that season. In goal was the academy graduate from Barcelona, Andre Onana. The left back was the Argentine Nicolas Tagliafico, a center back partnership of Davy Blind and 18-year-old Matthijs de Ligt. The right back was the Moroccan Nouri Merzawi. Ajax midfield partnership that season was Lars Schorn, accompanied by Frenkie de Jong, and then just above them in the number 10 position was Donny van de Beek. On the left wing was the Brazilian David Neres. The right winger position was another Moroccan in Hakim Ziyech, and the center forward that season was the Serbian Dusan Tadic. Among the bench were also some pretty memorable players for Ajax, with the defender Joe Veltman, Klaas-Jan Huntelaar, Kasper Dolberg, Noah Lang, and a very young Ryan Gravenberch. Let's also not forget who was Ajax manager that season. It was indeed Erik ten Hag, who we all know would famously go on to become the Manchester United manager. So, needless to say, after this amazing season that Ajax did have, some of Europe's top clubs did come calling for their special young talent. So, at the conclusion of that 2018-19 season, club captain Matthijs de Ligt was purchased from Juventus for 75 million euros. Barcelona also came calling for one of their future club captains in Frenkie de Jong, who also cost them 75 million euros. The central midfielder Lars Schorn was purchased from Genoa for a bargain 1.5 million euros at the time. Let's not forget, he was 31 at the time of his departure from the club, hence the smaller transfer fee. And then backup striker Kasper Dolberg was purchased for 20.5 million euros for the French club Nice. In his time in France, Dolberg would spend 2 seasons on loan at Hoffenheim and Sevilla respectively before being purchased by Anderlecht in 2023. And today, Dolberg is back at Ajax, age 28, still starting up top for the Eredivisie Giants. So that was at the start of the 2019-20 season. Fast forward one more year in the 2020/21 campaign, where Hakim Ziyech left for Chelsea, who purchased the midfielder for 40 million euros. Backup defender Joel Veltman was purchased by Premier League club Brighton Hove Albion for just a bargain, 1 million euros, where he still plays his football today. The attacking midfielder Donny van de Beek was also purchased by Manchester United for 39 million euros. Backup striker Klaas-Jan Huntelaar would leave for Bundesliga side Schalke at the age of 35, where he would eventually retire as a professional footballer. Another bench player in Noah Lang would also leave after spending 2 seasons on loan at Twente and Club Brugge. The Belgium club actually purchased the Dutch winger following his loan spell, He would spend 2 seasons in Belgium before returning back to the Netherlands, this time with PSV, where he won the Eredivisie title 2 more times with the club, and today, Noah Lang is enjoying his football and life in Naples with Napoli, where he most recently won the Supercoppa d'Italia. The next season, in the 2021/22 season, David Neres would leave for Ukrainian side Shakhtar Donetsk. Now, it's important to note that Neres did leave in the January transfer window of 2022, but we'll get more onto that in just a second. Then in the 2022/23 season, Andre Onana would run down his contract and leave as a free agent to Italian giants Inter de Milan. The right back Marzawi would also leave on a free, but to German giants Bayern Munich. Daley Blind would join Marzawi at Bayern Munich just 6 months later in the January transfer window of 2023. And the left back Nicolas Tagliafico was purchased by French side Olympique de Lyon for 4.2 million euros. And the academy boy Ryan Gravenberch, who only played 7 minutes in the league in 2018/2019, would also leave to German giants Bayern Munich after becoming a very important player following the departure of the likes of Frankie de Jong and Donny van de Beek. At Bayern, Gravenberch would struggle to find consistent playing time. He was then later on purchased by Liverpool, where today he is considered one of the most important midfielders in Arne Slot's system. So moving on to the 2023/24 season, where Dusan Tadic seemed to be the only player left from that 2018/19 campaign, but sadly his time also came to an end at the club, where he left on a free for Turkish giants Fenerbahce at the age of 34. So just like that, only 5 years removed from that European campaign where they lit up the entire world, Ajax were completely stripped of that iconic starting 11. So just then we touched on what happened to Ajax bench players that season, but what actually happened to their starting 11? Where did they go? How did they fare? Did they live up to the expectations that was once put on their shoulders? Let's find out. So let's start in goal with Andre Onana, who joined Inter Milan for 1 season, but it's got to be said, what a successful season that was. Onana did win the Coppa Italia and the Supercoppa d'Italia that campaign, but arguably most importantly, he did make it to a Champions League final, where eventually Inter fell short to eventual winners Manchester City. Following that successful stint in Italy, Onana became one of the world's most sought-out goalkeepers and eventually was purchased by Manchester United for 43.8 million euros. But it's got to be said, Onana's time in England pales in comparison to the time he spent in the Netherlands and Italy. Onana has lost all confidence following his move to Old Trafford and was sent out on loan to Turkish side Strasbourg at the start of this season to try and find and regain his confidence. Let's move on to the club captain Matthijs de Ligt, who would become a bit of a journeyman following his move from his boyhood side. Again, he was purchased by Juventus following that 2018/19 season, following in the footsteps of Chiellini and Bonucci, but it's gotta be said, de Ligt never truly lived up to his potential. Now, his time in Italy was far from a failure, as he did win the Serie A, Coppa Italia twice, and the Supercoppa, but then in the 2022/23 season, de Ligt was purchased by Bayern Munich for another whopping fee of 67 million euros, and once again, de Ligt failed to reach the heights that were once touted for him at Ajax. But despite this, de Ligt still won much silverware in Bayern, as he won the Bundesliga and DFB Pokal. Just 2 seasons later, de Ligt was eventually purchased by Manchester United, where he would reunite with his old manager Erik ten Hag, but has yet to see any silverware in England. Today, still only aged 26, de Ligt definitely has time on his side to turn his career around and prove to the entire world that he is still an elite center back. But maybe in the end, a move away from the toxicity and mediocrity at Old Trafford would suit his career best. Moving on to de Ligt's center back partner that season, who was Davy Blind. Now, for those of you that don't know, Blind truly has a heartwarming story. In August of 2022, Blind actually collapsed in a preseason friendly for Ajax due to a heart condition. Despite this setback, Blind would come back and return to full fitness for not only Ajax, but for also his country, the Netherlands, and compete later on in the 2022 World Cup. However, in August of 2022, Blind and Ajax mutually agreed to terminate his contract, but just 6 months later, in January of 2023, Blind was picked up by Bayern Munich on a free. Now, Blind did only go on to make 4 appearances for the club, but he was still a part of their Bundesliga winning campaign that season. Today, at the age of 35, Blind is still enjoying his football in Spain with Girona. So let's move on to the left back, Nicolas Tagliafico, who has been at Lyon since the 2022/23 season, where he is still an undisputed starter for the French club. However, Tagliafico has yet to win a club trophy since his departure from Ajax, but if you ask me, I don't think the Argentine will care that much, as he did win the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. Let's move on to the other fullback, Marzawi. Now, Marzawi did leave for Bayern Munich on a free in 2022, where he did win a domestic double in the club with his 2 seasons there. Following Bayern, Marsawi was picked up by Manchester United in the summer of 2024 for a fee of 12.8 million euros. Today, Marsawi is still at the English club, but similar to his former Ajax partner, De Ligt has yet to see any silverware in England. Marsawi has also been struggling with the constant rotating door of managers at Old Trafford, as well as the toxic atmosphere. Moving on to the midfield, where we'll probably start with the most defensive player, who was Lars Schön. Now, Schön did leave after that successful 2018-19 season, once again for Italian side Genoa, where he spent 2 years at the club and then half a season back in the Eredivisie with Heerenveen, and then made another move to another Eredivisie side, Nijmegen, where he would spend 4 years before hanging up his boots at the start of the 2024-25 season, aged 39. Moving on to Schön's midfield partner in that double pivot system, arguably the most famous export to come from this Ajax side, Frenkie de Jong. Now, de Jong did make his big money move to Barcelona, and through thick and thin has stuck with the Blaugrana. During his time in Spain, de Jong has won 2 La Liga trophies, 2 Copa del Reyes, and 3 Supercopas de España. Now, there was a short period of time where many fans in Barcelona were calling for Frenkie de Jong to leave the club following mediocre performances, but since the arrival of Hansi Flick, and since being played once again in his preferred midfield position of a double pivot, FDJ has won over the fans and is playing some of the best football of his life. So on to the attacking midfielder role, Donny van de Beek. Again, Donny moved to Manchester United following that 2018-19 season, but it's gotta be said, he has not been the same player ever since. Van de Beek has struggled with staying fit and was competing against Bruno Fernandes for minutes in that squad. More or less, Van de Beek has not had a good time in England. Now, yes, he did win the Carabao Cup back in 2022-23, but that has been the only trophy to his name since leaving Ajax. Van de Beek did have 2 loan spells in his time in Manchester, both on loan to Everton and Frankfurt respectively, but again, found no success. Eventually, Van de Beek was purchased by Spanish side Girona in 2024, where he is still at today with his former Ajax teammate, Davy Blind. But it's gotta be said, Van de Beek is still heavily plagued by injuries. Now, had it not been for those injuries and that inconsistency that followed him throughout the years, who knows where Donny van de Beek would be today. Alright, so let's move on to the forwards, where we'll start with the right winger, Hakim Ziyech. Now, Ziyech, like many other players from this Ajax squad, have failed to live up to their potential following his big money move to Chelsea in 2020. Now, despite winning many trophies with Chelsea, Ziyech was always a bit part player for the Blues. He was never a consistent starter, and mostly he did come off the bench. Now, despite this, Ziyech was still part of that team that won the Champions League in 2020-21, along with the UEFA Super Cup and the FIFA Club World Cup in its previous format, along with a handful of domestic cups. Now, in 2023, Ziyech would join Turkish side Galatasaray, where he did spend 2 years. In his time in Turkey, Ziyech did win the Turkish league both seasons that he was there, along with a domestic cup. However, following the move to Turkey, Ziyech would join Qatari side Al Duwai, where he would spend only 4 months at the club, and then would return home to Morocco, where he is now playing for Wydad AC. Ziyech is yet to make an appearance for the Moroccan side, but has stated in many interviews that he is very happy to be back in Morocco. On the other wing now with the Brazilian David Neres. Now, as I mentioned before, Neres did leave to Ukrainian side Shakhtar Donetsk in the January transfer window of 2022, where only 1 month later, Russia would begin their sickening invasion of Ukraine. Now, because of this, Neres was unable to make 1 appearance for the club and was forced to flee the country. So Neres would then move on to Portuguese side Benfica in June of 2022, where he won the league and Supercopa. Then in 2024, Neres moved to Italy for Napoli, where he actually won the Serie A under Antonio Conte in his first season, and today he is still enjoying his football in Naples. Moving on to the final player to leave this Ajax squad, who was Dusan Tadic, who did leave in 2024 for Turkish side Fenerbahce. Tadic would score 21 goals across 2 campaigns for the Turkish Giants. In 2025, Tadic would leave for the United Arab Emirates League, where he's still at today, playing for Al Wada, age 37. So that is what happened to those players that did leave that starting 11 from Ajax in 2018-19. But what has come of the club since that campaign? After all, the whole point of this series is to highlight the club and see what happened to them after the entire world stripped them of their talent. Ajax would move on to become more or less a selling club, as they would find tremendous talent from around the world, build them up, and then move them on for a profit. The club would do this with Lisandro Martinez, Edson Alvarez, Antony, Mohamed Kudus, Sebastian Haller, and Calvin Bassey. Ajax would also go on to win 2 more Eredivisie titles since the 2018/19 season, but they have yet to win a league title since the 2021/22 campaign. They have also yet to make another deep run in the Champions League since 2019, but nonetheless, Ajax was definitely a huge club before that 2018/19 season, with many legendary footballers coming through that academy, like Johan Cruyff. However, today it's got to be said that not many European top teams are shopping at Ajax today, as it's been proven time and time again that many players struggle to adapt from the Eredivisie to one of Europe's top 5 leagues. Now, once again, Ajax is the team with much history before the 2018/19 season. They actually are one of the very few teams to win a UEFA Champions League and are world-renowned as one of the top teams in Europe. Ajax have risen from the ashes many times before, and I'm sure it's only a matter of time before they rise up once again and become one of Europe's top sides. So that is going to do it for this episode of Teams That Were Torn Apart. I hope you guys are enjoying the series. If you guys have any suggestions, make sure you leave them down below in the comments. If you've enjoyed this type of content, please leave a like, consider commenting or subscribing to my channel. Thank you guys so much for coming back to this channel and checking out my content. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Take care and God bless.